it's that every single person in Mumbai had a story about it, and we wanted to really give a overall idea of what went down at that time.
How did the central idea, where did it start from? The director Nikhil Advani wrote it. He began with the idea and then you came into the picture.
Well, Nikhil had given us one line. Basically, he told us this is it's a government hospital during 26/11. That was his concept that he gave, and then the writing team, all of us, we kind of sat down on it. I mean, obviously Nikhil included, but we all started. We took that one line, and then from there we started developing the concept. We, you know. Started coming up with the characters, we started coming up with the basic storyline, and then we moved into the researching and actually asking real people their stories, because our biggest thing was also that we wanted to tell real people stories, and the reason it's fiction and not like a documentary is because we are trying to combine different stories that we've heard from different places. We didn't just want to tell one person's story or one hospital story. We wanted to combine all the all the that every single person in Mumbai had a story about it, and we wanted to really give a overall idea of what went down at that time.
When you started researching on the subject, I'm sure, as you said, almost everybody in Mumbai had a story to tell. You know, even I was in Goa, and I also have a story to tell because I know what happened the next day, the kind of security meetings and everything. The International Film Festival of India was going on, and I was privy to those security meetings and the precautions. So everybody had a story. So how does a screenplay writer pick and choose a story that fits into his larger narrative? Importance wise, what is important and what is not important? How did you come down to that you picked up, let's say, 5 or 10 signature stories, characters like the wife of the ATS chief and others,
Yeah.
who decided on that kind of characterization and how did it begin?
Um, well, of course, final call is made by the director, I'd say, in most cases. But I think with picking the stories, of course, you will pick the ones that are most interesting to you personally. But it is really hard to. You also have to make sure that your characters can would fit seamlessly into that story, and that's a story that you can show in a way that makes sense with the rest of the narrative. So it is hard because sometimes you're very interested in one story and you want to put it, but it's feeling very forced. So you have to be able to make that decision that, like, there were so many, like, we were doing Karma Hospital. I mean, the real hospital is Karma Hospital, and they had, the nurses there. There were so many women with newborn babies, and when the attackers came in, they made all the mothers in the room start breastfeeding their kids so that the babies wouldn't cry and make any noise, and so the attackers wouldn't know where to find them. And that was such a beautiful story and such an amazing visual, but it didn't fit in with the storyline that we had come up with and the characters that we had come up with. And so unfortunately we had to cut that scene from the story because it just wasn't fitting, and it was hard, but we had to do what was best for the storytelling and the narrative.
So when you write such screenplays for a web series, how do you think it is different from writing a feature film or a short film?
Well, I am still pretty early on in my career, so I don't know how much confidence I can say this is the difference. But in my experience, with, like I said, one of the biggest things is the character development, which I think in web series you have the space to explore that. You have the space to explore this sort of uh, big arcs, and you can plant something in the beginning which comes back later on. With it comes to films, the way people watch it is you sit down, you watch the whole thing, and you're done. So films tend to be a little more plot driven, and there's a different structure because at least in Bollywood you have the intermission, so you have to make sure it's like two story arcs. There's one beginning to end before the intermission, there's one beginning to end after the intermission, but it all also has to be one story.
Hmm.
With And also it shows there's a different audience in a sense. The films reach a wider audience, they're more for the masses. So uh, maybe there are things that you can get away with in web series that you wouldn't necessarily be able to get away with in feature films. You can push the envelope a little bit more in web series. With short films, I really think short films are just very personal. I think because people, most of the time when people are working on short films, it's like a labor of love. They write the whole story themselves or work very closely with the person writing it, and you're involved in every aspect. So I think short films are a completely different thing because that is a much more intimate kind of thing. Whereas with films and shows, you're working with teams of people, and every aspect there's a different team, and it becomes something so much bigger than what it was at the start and what it felt like when you were writing it.
Are there any ground rules for writing a web series? Are there any do's and don'ts?
um well, for sure. I mean, there is you have to make sure, especially right now with the OTT platforms, the way it is, people are binging content, so you have to
Mhm.
make everything uh, bingeable kind of, in a sense. You want to have each episode has to have a story in and of itself. Feel like, sure, the story continues across the whole season, but each episode should also feel like a
A
complete story.
self-contained story.
Exactly. It should feel like
Okay.
this is one chapter in the whole book.
Hmm.
So you really you're kind of you have to structure it in such a way that each episode has something big and exciting happen. Each episode has the characters do something, but then you also have to keep in mind that this is the larger picture, and can I plant something here that comes back later? It's a lot of planning and plotting, and which I think, it's almost like how the way you plot a film, each episode you have to plot it like that almost, because it has to be self-contained, but it also has to be something that you build up across the episodes.